right, welcome. I'm Cindy Bensley Gertz, creator of Conscious Living Arts, the Vibrant Woman Program, and Inspired Menopause Circles. Welcome to my series of Vibrant Voices. So in 2021, I sat down and did a series of interviews with all of my students. And this past year, I am taking a little different approach. I'm interviewing fellow business women. What I discovered was that about 75% of the women that I work with are business owners. They're in business for themselves. And there's a saying in business that 90% of working on your business is actually working on yourself. So I thought these interviews would be inspiring to the women out there in my community and show you how a healing journey and a transformation can maybe become a business someday. So I'm here today in my last interview of the year with Lisa Jara, who I met at the Bringing Spirituality Home Summit this past fall. We were both presenters at the summit. Lisa is a soul-based coach and a priestess of the blood mysteries. And I was completely drawn to her when I heard her speaking about tracking women's cycles and even tracking your cycle after menopause. So I thought, I need to know this woman. She's talking my language. I want to know more about this. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited that you're here, and we have so many juicy things to talk about today. I know that you are also a fan of talking about the taboo, so we might get to some taboo today as well. But I'd really like to just start with where you're from, a little bit more about who you are and what you do in the world.
Yeah. So I'm Lisa. I live in Germany. I am from Germany, together with my husband in a little apartment. And what I do from here is hold space for the dark and the taboo that we don't talk nearly enough about in our society. For the crises, for the transitions, for the crossroads moments that as women and people who bleed especially, we go through like every month, the little death we experience every month, which prepares us in the end for the greater transitions in life. And I do that both like as a soul midwife, as I like to say, really being with you, holding space for your own wisdom and answers to arise of how you want to navigate the situation that you're in. And I also speak a lot about cyclical living, how you've already addressed that, like how we can live more in tune with our bodies and our cycles, which in itself is a whole taboo topic, like menstruation. How many women or people who bleed still think like period is the worst thing that happens to me so often? And yeah, all of this to actually just help us be more self-aware, understand and know ourselves better, because when we are awake, we can't put back to sleep so easily. And in a world that's constantly trying to manipulate us into conforming to some kind of standards, some kind of people set for us, I believe it's important that we all wake up to our own inner beauty and truth and power and wisdom.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Everything you said. I take notes during my interviews because I don't want to miss a thing. And I've written it down about 4 things that I'd like to unpack a little bit more. I love the piece about knowing yourself better. As a yoga teacher, when students used to come to my classes, I do women's circles now, but when they used to come to my classes, and still when they come to my women's circles, I always say, I don't care if you learn a single yoga pose, but if you leave my class or my circle understanding, knowing yourself better, then I feel like I've accomplished my mission. So I love that. Taboo, yeah. Menopause, which, as you know, is what I'm really focusing on, perimenopause and menopause right now. That is still a taboo subject. It is still so much in the shadows, and women feel isolated and invisible. And I really thought it'd be different by now. So, and it's not. So I'm really glad that you're doing this work in the world. And you mentioned that idea of menstruating as a little death every month. And then we come into perimenopause, and it is another, going into menopause is another form of death, of leaving behind this cycle, which I like to think of as a friend, rhythm that we've had for, at least 30 years in our life, unless a woman, has a medical menopause for some reason. So I'd love to go back to the one thing that drew me to you instantly, was this idea of tracking your cycles, even beyond menopause, postmenopausal. So could you talk a little bit more about that, and what that looks like, what tracking looks like when you have your cycle? Because I still have women in my audience who are cycling, as well as what that looks like when you're in menopause, and why you would do that.
Yes, of course. And it's another form of understanding ourselves better and getting to know our rhythm better. And like I love to say, we are all cyclical beings. So whether you're a man, a woman, anything between and beyond that, we all have a cycle. It's just based on a different rhythm. And so for women and people who bleed, it is on a monthly rhythm. And the moon really is our blueprint. She has been here far longer than we have, than we little humans have. And our menstrual cycle is shaped after the moon's cycle, because mens comes from moon. And so I see it like in the transition into postmenopause, we transition back to the original cycle of grandmother moon. And before that, we do have our personal cycle. And I believe that even though, for example, the physical aspects of the cycle aren't as pronounced anymore when you have crossed over, you still have an ebb and flow of like a monthly ebb and flow, and times where you feel more creative, or where you feel more reflective or contemplative. And knowing which phase occurs for you within a month allows you to even make preparations. I also include it in my family life. I know that friends of mine, they include it into, like, even with little children, their children know already that during menstruation, mama needs a little more rest than at other times, and that it's okay to not be the same every day. That's definitely the biggest change that it made in my life, because I have a long history of anorexia. So I have a long history of hating my body, feeling ashamed about my body. And while I'm not completely healed, and I don't believe that's something that was ever going to happen. Like, we're always just on the journey, right? But for me, it helped me make peace with my body and with my anorexia in the end, because I understood, okay, yeah, this week I feel completely bloated and ugly and fat. And I know that without changing anything, next week I will feel completely different, because then I will be after my menstruation. And so what I do track, like, I personally do track a lot of different things by now, but I always say start small. And I have a very simple approach, which is tracking the day of your cycle you're on, maybe the phase of your cycle. I can speak to that in a moment. And 3 words for how you are on that given day. And you track that over 3, 4, 5 cycles. And then you can start looking for patterns, and finding the phases where you feel more energetic, or more creative, or more communicative, or more contemplative, whichever it is for you. And so day 1 is either the first day you bleed, or dark moon. So when the moon is not visible in the sky anymore. So depending on whether or not you're menopausal, it's either your first day of your bleed, or if you've crossed over, it's the dark moon. And then you just number the days consecutively and write down your 3 words. It doesn't take longer than 2 minutes a day. and you kind of get an idea of how your rhythm works. And I mean, then we do have all these different phases. Like every cycle is made up of 4 phases, and that's true for a day, that's true for a month, it's true for a year, like our seasons. And I think it's very intuitive to most people to go with the seasons. That's why many are already talking about your inner winter, inner spring, inner summer, inner autumn, because we understand kind of what the atmosphere is like at that time. And so our menstruation or the dark moon phase would be our inner winter, where we can maybe feel more inward and want to rest a bit more. We might be more reflective. And then we move into inner spring, and there's lots of energy coming back. You might be very inspired, or even to the point of overwhelm and trying to spread your energy everywhere. So like there's these 2 polarities. And then moving into inner summer around ovulation or full moon, depending on where you are in your journey. And where we usually feel more like open, outward, communicative, with lots of energy. And then moving back inwards during the autumn phase, where we really come into this truth-speaking power, like where we feel reconnected with who we really are and what we came here to be. And I believe that a lot of women experience like PMS symptoms, so premenstrual syndromes, mood swings, and a lot of issues, is because this is our truth-speaking time. And some part of us understands that we're not living our truth, that we're not living the life we want to live, but we can't like put words to it. And so our body shows us in all these different ways it has that something is not right for you. And so every cycle we experience this going back inwards, and a little ego death, if you will, for winter when we turn inward, and then going out again. And it's just this beautiful spiral of getting, and I always say like our cycle is like a compass, and in the center it's you. And we are cycling more and more, spiraling back to ourselves.
Oh, I love that imagery, and I'm so excited that I've found a friend who also tracks and and loves the cycles. You know, I started tracking my menstrual cycle back in my early 20s when I was still in college, and I continued to do it a little more sporadically until I started going into perimenopause, and then I became very, very diligent about it again, and really encourage the women that I work with to also track during that time, but slightly different than you. Like I broke it down into like physically, emotionally, mentally, and then spiritually, all these different ways that you could track. And I like this idea of 3 words. And I want to start that with the next new moon cycle. I think that would be so interesting. And it's so simple. It's so easy. That's what I love about it. It's just, write down your 3 words and then start looking for patterns. And I think what happens to women when we go into menopause is that this rhythm that of our menstrual cycle that we counted on for 30 plus years, it becomes very erratic for a while, and then it fades away and it's gone. And so what new rhythms can we find or can we create? And like you, I was really drawn to the moon. So I love watching the cycles of the moon, and that whole idea that, during PMS, that there's this wake-up call. They're like little wake-up calls every month. Your body sends you messages that you can listen to. And then in perimenopause, it's one big giant wake-up call.
Yep.
So it's this giant wake-up call to really, like, I think of it as attend to the things that maybe you haven't noticed or that you've been pushing off or pushing away. And if we don't look at those things, they'll just continue to bubble up until we do look at them. So that's a nice segue to, you mentioned your own health crisis. And I find that most of the women that I interview, it's a health crisis of some kind that has inspired their own healing journey and transformation, and has inspired them to start a business. So helping other women or helping other people. So would you like to talk a little bit more about that, and what inspired you to go into the work you're doing, and why you love to do it?
Yes. First of all, I just wanted to add something I didn't mention earlier, is that like when you do the cycle check-in, what I really find the most beneficial and helpful is when you've got your 3 words, ask yourself, and how can I honor that in my day today? Because I find that that's also the like a very helpful way to move through any challenge in your life, taking it day by day, step by step, day by day. Like, how can you honor that? You might have a full plate, there might be lots of obligations that you can't do anything about, and still you can bring your own awareness to the moment and like change your perspective on things.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. It's not just the awareness, it's then, how can I use that awareness to listen to my body and
And
pay
to be
attention.
compassionate with myself, because I find that's
Yeah.
like the most important thing, that usually we're just so harsh. I mean, we are our worst, are our worst critic, we ourselves. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
knowing that I have a full plate and today I feel inward and cranky, how can I honor that and not make myself wrong for it?
Right. Exactly. I love that. And I feel that's a really very important message that all women have to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm definitely on that journey myself of coming to terms with the fact that I have never been wrong, that like people might have told me openly that I am the wrong one or the odd one out, or that it was just me perceiving the situation in that way. But my whole personal story of a mental health crisis in 2017, where I was at the lowest point. I hinted that I have been anorexic for a long time, and I also deal with obsessive compulsive disorder, and have since I was 14 in varying degrees. And actually that health crisis was more of a bringing me back home to myself, waking up to what had already been there all along. That's what I love about these moments. I say like crises are moments of awakening. They show us some kind of truth, and yes, we need courage to face that truth, because the truth can sometimes be hurting and painful, depending on what kind of truth it is. But I don't want to waste my life living a lie. So in 2017, I had become so constrained. I had restricted myself so much, to the point that I was like, every day there were just lots and lots of chores and tasks and rules that I had to strictly follow. Some of them were contradicting each other, and I didn't feel like I had any room to breathe anymore. And there was this one moment where I thought, do I want to continue like this for another at least 40 years? Because I was 30 at that time, and I didn't want to. And I was like, something needs to change now. And so with the help of my therapist, I went into a mental health clinic for 3 months and got back in touch with my emotions, because what OCD and anorexia help you with is suppressing your emotions. Like, especially, of course, the difficult ones, but when you suppress one, you also suppress the other. So what I found through getting back in touch with these difficult emotions, it also opened up my capacity to feel joy, and like, yeah, and also my compassion and everything that came back. And what the interesting and fun thing was that, yes, I went through enormous emotional pain during that time, and I found I could hold myself through it, which was a very powerful feeling. I also discovered that I am actually quite good at holding other people through their shit. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, we can
but
swear
like,
here.
good. But it was like every day after the sessions were over, you would find me sitting in the rooms we shared together, in the living rooms, and talk to people, just curious about their journeys and what they wanted from life and what they were motivated by, and their sorrows as well, and holding them through bouts of crying and all of that comes with being a human on planet Earth. And I enjoyed myself so much. I felt so alive and vibrant in the midst of all of that intense emotion. That I knew, okay, my job in finance was not something that really turned me on, and I needed to be with people. And I remembered that I had always been the one listening. I have always been called a good listener by my friends. And so I just came back to what I was naturally good at, is being there. I'm a Scorpio, you know, I love the deep, the dark, the taboo intensity of emotions. That's my jam. And that's where I discovered that. And then that whole thing brought me on the journey with the cycles when I read a book which introduced me to that idea, because I hadn't paid much attention to it before that time. And it really opened my eyes that we live in a world that is not set up in a cyclical way, that is kind of denying our human beingness. And yeah, I got really angry, and now I'm dealing with all the sacred rage in my premenstrual time as well, of like, we need to wake up to the structures and kind of, I'm not one for smashing like the patriarchy and the oppressive systems, because I think that aggression usually leads to counter aggression. And so we've got this continuous fighting. So I am more for the, let's turn within, let's follow our own wisdom, see what makes us happy and joyful. And then we will naturally withdraw from these systems. We will just not take part in their game anymore. And what will happen? The structures are going to crumble because they've got nothing to hold on to. And tada, when those structures crumble, we've got something different to put in place, because we have learned how to live and love according to a different paradigm all this time.
Wow. I like that vision. Yeah.
I call it my quiet yet powerful revolution.
A quiet yet powerful revolution. Yes, the strength that's within.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and there's, my mind is just kind of swirling with reflections right now. The first one just being how much I admire your courage to talk about mental health, another taboo subject, right? And you know, my own brother has bipolar and also deals with excuse me, kind of obsessive tendencies, and so I'm, you know, very familiar with the pain of all of that. So just really admire you for speaking up about it and talking about it as part of your journey. I appreciate that. I think it lessens,
and you know what,
that stigma.
It was so interesting when I was in that clinic, and I was kind of meeting all these different people that were there for various reasons. And I found that at the core, all of us had the same wound. We didn't think we were worthy of anything. We like self-worth, self-respect. I don't even want to talk self-love. Just accepting ourselves was not present for any of us. And I believe there are so many more people out there who might not even develop like what we call like a disorder or something. I don't actually like to call them disorders. It's just a human being that has
Right.
some issues like all human beings have. But for some, it can be helpful to have a name to it. Some like having that name. But like all of us at the core have this deep wound that something isn't right with us. And for some, it develops into obsessive compulsive disorder, for others into bulimia, for others into depression. And
Yeah.
we need to address this root cause of feeling powerless and wrong in a world that wants us to stay in that state so they can control us more easily.
Yeah. Yeah, and those very things happen when you're going through perimenopause too, with the myths that exist, like, oh, you're too young, this is all in your head. You know, and there's more. We won't go too much into those, but just to give you a flavor for some of the things that, yeah, that we're told, and which causes us not to trust our own bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your life is over now. You are kind of old and useless because you can't bear children anymore.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I don't subscribe to that.
I
That's why
don't
I'm
either.
also so adamant about like, even at my age, I'm 35 now, and I am like, I have a strong opinion about wanting to talk about menopause now, because like it's such a great time. It's your entry point into your wisdom years.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful, and our society at large doesn't appreciate it. So I hope that more and more women, and I know you touch many hearts, and I'm so grateful for that, because women need to understand that they have power and wisdom inside of them. They
Yeah.
have life experience. They are valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to think of perimenopause as an initiation into wise womanhood,
Mm.
whether you use crone or matron. You know, another word would be priestess, which I'd like to circle back around and find out more about. What is this priestess of the blood mysteries? Tell us about that.
I think it was the woman who wrote the book that made me aware of the cycles and all of that, who said that in one of her videos. She's called Tanishka, the Moon Woman. And she said this term, and I was like, ooh, that sounds intriguing. And the blood mysteries are just what our blood initiates us into. So we come into this world through blood at birth. And as women and people who bleed, we will have our first bleed at some point, which is another big initiation. And then at some point, we may, if we choose to, become parents and birth a child ourselves, or birth a project or something. And then at the end, transition into menopause. And probably at the end, our blood goes cold when we die, but it's just another transition into something nobody of us knows what
Yeah.
it is, but it's still a transition.
Right. And
And
there's
so
the mystery, the unknown, the big unknown.
exactly. And for every transition, it's this big mystery. I mean, the whole of life is mysterious. We don't know what's going to come tomorrow. We might think we know and we're in control, but we aren't. And also, like this, the whole blood mysteries thing is, when you think back 2000 years, people didn't understand why women were bleeding without a wound. That was a mystery. They could bleed without a wound, so their blood, our blood, is holy and used to put on the land so that fruit and trees and everything can grow, right? And so by now there is a whole new movement where we return back to that, and, for example, offer a little bit of our blood to the earth when we bleed. And I think it brings us back to our natural rhythm, in tune with Mother Earth.
Yeah.
And when you're post-menopause, you can still offer a little something, maybe a bit of red wine or something to the earth during dark moon.
I like that as a possible ritual. Yeah. That's
And so like
beautiful.
I sometimes say I'm a priestess of the blood mysteries. I don't dare to claim that title fully yet. I
Oh,
don't know if I mean priestessing, but to me priestessing is about initiation and initiating people or being present when their blood initiates them, and just being there, not even to guide the process much, but to draw out their inner wisdom so that they learn how to guide themselves and navigate these transitions.
yeah.
And yeah,
I
that's
love
what
that.
priestessing and this becoming aware of yourself and knowing yourself, that's what it's about for me.
Yeah. I love it. Likewise. Yeah. That journey inward to draw out who you are and to really to 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 be a channel to help people find their own inner wisdom. And I like to say to the women that I work with, I don't have any of the answers. You have them all. They're
Mm.
inside. I'm just here as a guide and a channel to help you discover them or unearth them and find them.
Yeah, and I've recently I call myself a mirror, and I've had this realization actually just this past dark moon that my parents divorced when I was 5, and I have a very strained relationship with my mother, and a lot of things happened, and I just realized that I was never wrong. I was the mirror showing what wasn't working.
Mm.
Even when they separated, like as much as I felt like children do take part of the blame, or of the guilt, but I understood that I just showed them what wasn't working in their marriage, and they could have chosen to work on that. They chose to separate, which is fine. And even after that, I think whenever people rejected me for saying my truth, it was more because I was the mirror showing them and they didn't want to see, which is fine too. It's their choice. But like
Mm.
really mirroring back your light and your shadow, because when you understand both, that's what self-awareness and self-understanding is about for me, knowing our shadows too, those aspects that we like to suppress and not look at, that we may perceive as flaws, which often is just because somebody told us they are flaws. But looking at all of these aspects and understanding that they are part of me or part of you, and learning how to care for yourself and integrate and go through the emotions that come with processing all the shadowy stuff, because deep emotions will come up when you look at where you hurt people. When I had to look at the ways I hurt my mother too, because a relationship is never one-sided. So I had to really look at and face, oh, I have hurt her too. That wasn't an easy thing to see, and it came with lots of emotions, but like then processing them and realizing, hey, yes, and I'm a human being and it's okay. We sometimes mess up. It's
Yeah.
okay. Doesn't make me a bad person. It means I'm human.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that idea. What a powerful insight and shift of perspective that you're a mirror, I'm a mirror, we're mirrors for each other. I really like that.
And we are. And I know that you and your women's circles experience that we just mirror also each other's strengths. And so we feel less alone because we realize, hey, there are others who go through something similar, who kind of understand me and got my back.
That is
And
exactly right.
and then through that, we learn to have our own back.
Yeah.
And that's the role a parent should have, I believe, is like mirroring that there's nothing wrong with you and that you can have your own back. And parents are also just humans, so it's okay, they make mistakes. We all do.
Yeah. Oh. Oh, wow. So, Lisa, is there anything else you'd like to share with my community?
Well, there's lots and lots and lots I could say and speak to.
Yeah. If there was one more thing that you really wanted folks to know, what would that be?
You're not wrong, and you've never been wrong. And don't believe anybody who tells you you're wrong. That's like the biggest thing I had to learn or learned recently. I don't have it fully embodied yet, but you're not wrong. Just because someone doesn't like you doesn't mean you're wrong. That's their problem.
Yeah.
You are always a mirror and they project stuff onto you. As we do too, like I project stuff onto others too, but it's then about, okay, what can I learn from my reaction to that person? And so it's not that you are wrong, you're not, you are whole, you are complete, you don't need to be fixed. And you are powerful beyond measure. You can't even imagine how powerful you are. And look for the choice that you have, because in any situation, as powerless as we might feel, and as many things are already set as there may be, there is always something where you've got power, that you've got power over, like a choice. And if it's just, quote unquote, just a perspective shift, you've got that power.
Yeah, that's powerful. Oh, all right. Well, I would love for my audience to know a few things, how they can stay in touch with you, what you're offering and working on right now. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, to stay in touch with me and maybe be supported in your own little deaths and rebirth processes every month, I do offer Soul Mail, which is my weekly personal letter to you in tune with the moon, because obviously I can't share it according to your own cycle. If you're post-menopause, the moon probably is your cycle, so you would receive it. And I give little like heads ups. Now we are moving into this phase. That means that this might come up, or it's time to look at your shadow, or now's the time to follow your inspiration and be a playful child again, like all these things. And I also share like all my offerings and fireside chats or whatever I put out there through them, but they are meant as a support, a weekly support to journey this process of death and rebirth with more awareness.
I love that. Soul Mail. All right. Sweet. And
it's a little twist on snail mail because I love writing.
Right. I love it. I love the name of that. So I'd also love to know what you have coming up this fall, if you've got a program you're offering, or if you've got a gift you'd like to give to my audience. And of course, some people might be watching this much later on. So if it's not timely, they can definitely connect with you through your soul mail, and then they'll find out about different things you're offering when they come up again. But what's coming up now? Like, we're going into the holiday season and the new year. Do you have something special that you'd like to talk about that you're offering?
Yes. I mean, obviously, I also just have my regular coaching through difficult life transitions and challenges. If you want someone to just hold space for you, ask questions that will bring about your own inner wisdom in the form of your inner images and metaphors. I also support women and people who bleed into connecting more deeply with their cycle, and that also works for women who are post-menopause. I've had one of those deep dive sessions with a woman who had an early menopause journey, and it helped her make peace with this, that these kind of reproductive times of her life are over, and that her ovaries and her womb still have a task, like a purpose, even after menopause. So I do believe it's a powerful experience, no matter where you are in your journey. And then because I'm all about cyclical living during the Christmas season, so from December 25th to January 6th, I hold a course called the Mystical 12 Holy Nights. It is a tradition that comes from southern Germany and Austria. And I'm trying to bring that awareness to the English-speaking community too, because I have gone through that ritual myself for the last 5 years and have led a course on that the last 3 years. And it's kind of the time between the years when, like, you know, the 1 year is not yet over, but the other hasn't begun. And it's like this time in between when the veils to the other world are thin, and we can do some oracles for next year and have a peek at what might be happening for us during the next year. So it's a time of both letting go of the old year and reflecting, and then the second part is more about like inviting in the new and having a few rituals there. And I would love to support you through that. I hold that every year. So whenever you watch this video, you can get on my wait list, or just let me know that you would like to be part of the next round. But I really love this ritual to close the old year in a sacred, intentional way that is doable in like 5 to 10 minutes a day over the course of 12 days or more if you like. But I'm always trying to not put too much information in, and rather have an experience of that atmosphere of that time.
I love it. And I love the idea of end of the year ritual to help us release and let go and get ready for the new year. Well, there'll be links, I think, that you'll be sending me that I will include with this interview wherever I post it, and send it out with email and put it on YouTube. So I'm sure there's so much more that we could talk about, that we're going to have to do this again sometime. I have just loved having you here today, Lisa. Thank you so much. And I just really appreciate your time and your energy and your wisdom. And I'm excited to start tracking with the next new moon. And I hope the women listening to this will also and take advantage of all these wonderful ideas that you presented today. So thank you so much. It's just been such a joy and a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.